Should trans people use disabled toilets when they're in public places? Get your calls in. 0207 862 2222. We're asking this after the Conservatives leader Kemi Badenoch said that made the suggestion that trans people should use disabled toilets after the Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman. Badenoch was asked if she would support trans people being given their own facilities, to which she replied that most organisations already have a unisex toilet available, currently being used by disabled people. She says that's different from being gender neutral and that trans people could use disabled toilets if they needed their own facility. It's been a massively heated issue since the ruling that sex is defined by biology. Mike, you know, toilets and sport, they seem to be the battlegrounds for this debate. So here we are. Kemi Badenoch says we have a toilet. It's the disabled toilet. That's what trans people should be using.
Well, but I mean, she's not insisting that will now become a transgender toilet. I mean, I'm terribly sympathetic to somebody who finds himself in a public place and, you know, who is transgender or who feels uncomfortable in their own body and doesn't want to go into one toilet or another. But I also would say that, you know, I use things like restaurants and bars and all that, and a lot of the time the disabled toilet is not being used. Now, that's because we're talking about minorities. I mean, in numbers, about 0.4%, I think, of the population are trans, and a bigger percentage are disabled. But what I'm saying is, I think there is room for that facility, the disabled toilet, to be of use to both disabled people and trans people without in any way suggesting that trans people should be regarded as disabled. I'm not saying that for a minute.
But you actually are.
I'm not.
Because
I'm not.
Listen to how this sounds. Trans women are too dangerous for normal female toilets, cis female toilets, but they're not dangerous enough to share with a disabled woman. That sounds mad to me.
No,
that doesn't make any sense.
Narinder, there's
so
only one...
So a trans woman is safe enough to use a disabled toilet. By the way, you're pitting two marginalised groups together.
Common sense. There's only
That's
one.
Not common sense.
There's only one person in a disabled toilet at a time. At a time. There's only one person at a time. So one person can't threaten themselves.
But when I, as a woman, go to the toilet, I'm only in the toilet cubicle by myself. I don't sit there with the toilet door open.
You've got a locked door in a disabled toilet.
So I have to lock the door in my toilet.
Typically, hold on, let's just clear this up. Typically, there will be men's toilets, there'll be men's toilets, there'll be women's toilets, and there'll be a single disabled toilet with a locking door. So the likelihood of a trans person being in the same space as a disabled woman, I think
it can't happen.
No, I don't think so,
Matt.
I think that you all need to stop shoving your kind of bias and hate towards trans people.
I don't have that.
And your hang-ups about sex. I don't really care what's in someone's pants, and I lock the toilet when I go in the female's toilet. I don't sit there having a wee with the door open. No one sees my bits. Right?
But you do that in a disabled toilet.
I think we need to stop the hate towards trans.
There is no hate.
And we need to stop pitting two marginalised groups against each other, because that's a disabled space. They've fought for that space. This is their...
And when it's not being used, it can be used for other people who need it.
You're actually,
What's wrong with that?
You are actually trying to erase trans women from public space.
Of course I'm not.
We're going to pick this up. We're going to pick this up. I didn't get that feel from Mike, if I'm honest, Narinder. But now, though, we're taking your calls on that suggestion that trans people could use disabled toilets when they're in public spaces. Do you think that's a good idea? It was Kemi Badenoch's idea. Get your calls in now, 0207 862 2222. Now we can speak to a trans inclusion specialist about this. Joanne Lockwood joins us. Joanne, how are you today? And what was your reaction, crucially, to what Kemi Badenoch said?
Good morning, Matt. Thank you. The ironic thing is I'm 60 years old, and in the last 2 weeks I've become a toilet consultant. Everybody wants to talk about toilets, not about how we preserve the dignity of trans people. We don't deserve displacement, segregation, because it sends a dehumanising message that our identities are a problem to be managed and for people not to respect us. I welcome that trans people should have access to safe spaces, to clean facilities. It's a basic human right. But I don't think anybody should be left without a place to go. And I don't feel that segregating trans people into a disabled toilet, labelled as a disabled toilet, is fair for people who have a disability. You, the other panellists, I'm sure, wouldn't use a disabled toilet by default unless there was a specific reason for it. Even Kemi Badenoch herself said that it's predatory men causing the issues, not trans people. So why is the demonisation of trans people keep being repeated and we focus on the toilet issue?
So I suppose the origin of this is the idea of a safe space for women, and cis women would consider that a space that they've fought for very hard over centuries, really, that is not as safe as perhaps they would like it to be. Well,
Matt, I don't know how many female toilets you've ever been in your life, but as Narinder was saying, they all have locks, they all have doors. The only common areas around a sink where people wash their hands in the dryer, hopefully. I mean, obviously in the men's, nobody uses the hand dryers and the sinks anyway. So men probably... We don't stand around with our bits out in front of urinals. So this notion that it's not a safe space is complete fallacy. Many female toilets I go into have floor-to-ceiling self-contained units, maybe with a shared sink outside, often with the private sink inside. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about open plan spaces where people are naked doing their business.
I mean, it almost feels like actually urinals are the problem.
Urinals are dirty and stinky, and I think they look awful. They are grim.
But if
I think get rid of them, and then we've got no problem. It's all for men's laziness because they don't put up a toilet seat or know how to where you're sitting down. It's just that I just think that this demonising of trans women is awful. Nearly half of the British population feel that transgender people, the hate towards them is a problem. We don't. The 99.9% of the British population, sane population, don't feel trans women are a problem. I'm a female. They are not a problem. They are my sisters. I'm an ally to them.
Nobody's demonising trans women. What we're doing is, and
well,
I'm sure our guest here will agree with this, we're reacting to a ruling in the Supreme Court and how society now interprets and deals.
How will you police it then? Let's talk about this. How are you going to police this toilet situation?
The government have already said we're not going to police it. It's societal behaviour. What we've done is a new ruling has introduced another layer of behaviour within society that we should all adhere to.
It's just
introducing
nonsense and hate.
It's not.
That's what it's introducing.
It's a ruling of the Supreme Court.
Interesting to see that actually there's some medical opinion coming back and that says if you really look at gender and sex, actually they've got that ruling wrong. A lot of doctors now coming back and saying there's so many shades of grey between one thing and another.
It doesn't matter. The ruling's been made. Now it can be debated.
This has got nothing to do with women's safety.
Debated.
It's got nothing.
I'm sorry.
This has got nothing to do with women's safety. I, as a woman, don't feel any safer if the trans women go into disabled toilets or if they're going to. I don't feel any safer.
If you've got care for trans
I'm okay.
people, if you want to consider trans people and their role in society, then you should be open to debate about how this decision affects.
I'm scared of cis men.
Them within society.
I'm scared of cis men.
Narinder, Joanne, if you could stay with us, we're going to take some calls.
Sorry, Joanne.
Let's hear from Shash in Cardiff. Are disabled loos the right place for trans men and women, Shash?
So yeah, I'm Shash Rapan. I do stuff for the Trans Safety Network, and we've looked into this and one of the things that this ruling is, I want to address the framing that because of this ruling we need to follow and change guidance and law. But the ruling does not say anything about bathrooms and in fact has many conflicting information and cites cases that are actually conflicting against what it says. And to specifically address the idea that because of the ruling we have to follow it is a fallacy in itself, in the sense that because the way we treat disabled people, trans people, other minorities in this country is not putting minorities first. The fact is that this Supreme Court ruling didn't have any trans people involved in talking about what it means for trans people. No trans lawyers were present, no trans doctors were present. There are trans experts. We're not just talking general trans people. We have trans experts who have studied and, researched this and who are not consulted.
Shash, can I bring you back to the question? Whether this idea that disabled toilets, as this third space, as Kemi Badenoch has identified, whether that makes sense, even as a transitional phase, as we are trying to develop a better understanding of the best way forward?
So I believe Kemi said this in regards to like, oh, what do businesses and organizations do? Or just use the disabled loos as a stopgap. But what people don't realize, the disabled loos in the first place were a stopgap for disabled people. Like, I'm a wheelchair user, you know, I use the disabled loos, and reality is the best disabled loos I've ever been in have been like unisex loos with cubicles where regular people, able-bodied people can go in, and there are disabled amenities in some of the cubicles so I can use it. Like,
so this idea then, Shash, this idea that disabled people and trans people, trans men and women, does it make you out to be other, if you like? There is men and women, and then there is this other space for other people. Is that something that either upsets you or makes sense?
Most definitely. I do want to address that this kind of rhetoric is very, as previously mentioned, segregation is very. The South African apartheid started off with, removing minorities from public spaces. Israel did the same with Palestinians. China did the same with the Uyghurs, and the Americans did it the same with the Japanese. This is first step of the genocide. Let's be very frank here. Nazi Germany did the same thing regarding Jewish people and queer people in removing them from public life, removing them from museums, work. I have friends now who have been told to stay work from home by allies at their workplace. And these are big businesses. I'm talking like Fortune 500 companies where these people work. They have important jobs, but they are trans people. But they have been told not to come into the office because they do not have policies in place because of this very vague, very misinterpreted ruling made by people who do not care about trans people and where hate groups are only allowed to talk.
Okay, thank you, Shash. Thank you, Shash. I want to come back to Joanne, if I may, here. Is that what's at the root here? Is that we are now hiving off trans men and women and making them other, putting them in a separate space, when you see yourself as a woman, regardless of what the rest of the world might say, this decision or this idea that you should be in a third space, is that fundamentally upsetting and disturbing to you?
In a nutshell, yes. That's exactly how it feels. Gender dysphoria, which is what I've been diagnosed with, which is what many other trans people have been diagnosed with, is where our sense of self aligns with that of a gender we weren't assigned at birth. So I see myself, I wholeheartedly, my whole essence, having spent 10 years on estrogen and testosterone suppression, is all focused around a feminine identity. So to be pushed into this third space feels completely dehumanizing. It basically says everything I've strived to be in my life, everything I stand for, I live for, is now rejected. I now have this problem where I now have two sexes. My birth certificate, my passport, my driving license, my gender recognition certificate say female. Equality Act says male. So who am I? Am I male? Am I female? I'm sitting on the fence and it's painful.
And I think what's even awful is that you just want to pee. People just want to pee and they're being demonised and they're too scared to go into public spaces. And can you imagine, Mike, we just had a toilet situation in the green room. The female toilets, not together. The female toilets were closed, the disabled was locked, only the men's was open. I just want to have a wee. These people just want to have a wee. And they're being you're criminalising transgender people just for wanting to have a wee.
Is it not?
You can't criminalise that.
Mike, do you not get the feeling that this idea of putting trans men and women in with the disabled is kind of that sense of you lot?
Well,
you
no.
It's not us. It's not us. It's you lot.
I tried to make this clear early on that I'm not for 1 minute suggesting there is similarity between disabled people and transgender people. What I'm saying is there is available toilet space in most buildings which is not used. Yes, but it's one at a time.
Yeah, but my understanding, and from the friends I have who are disabled, is it might not be used all the time, but when they need it, they absolutely need it.
I totally agree.
And it needs to be available.
I totally agree. But again, I use pubs and restaurants and establishments where you find the disabled toilet is not used a lot because, fortunately, there aren't as many disabled people.
Lisa's in London. Lisa, does this make sense to have a third space which protects what is perceived as a safe space for women?
Yes, I definitely agree with this. I was a victim of domestic violence for many years, and I was also sexually abused when I was younger. And I don't like being in tight spaces with males. I don't like it, and
Okay.
I'm sorry, but for me, when I go to the toilet or the changing room or whatever, I don't want to be enclosed because I have my trauma, and I shouldn't every time have to say, oh, this is what's happened to me in the past, for people to understand where I'm coming from and not be told, oh, you're being transphobic. Because as soon as you say, oh, I don't like something, then you're automatically labeled transphobic. And I'm not transphobic at all. I've just had past trauma, and I just prefer to be if I'm in an enclosed space, I prefer to be it done in a certain way. And also with unisex toilets where it is more open plan and people come in and out, in certain respects, I don't think that works really good, especially if you're in nightclubs and stuff like that. Because
Lisa, can
as
I
a
ask
woman,
you, I really want to get to the point of this, and I've got very limited time. Lisa, I'm so sorry to hear about what you've been through, and nobody should have to go through that. But could I ask you very honestly, would any of these crimes committed by someone who was a trans woman?
No, but that doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter, though. Not because it wasn't done by a trans woman means that it still wouldn't have an impact on me or someone else.
But Lisa, I'm so sorry that what you've gone through, and I understand where your trauma comes from and why you feel traumatized. But what if it's a trans man that's in your space and he's looking very manly, but actually it's a biological female? Then you're still going to feel scared.
I understand. I would still feel that way. That's what I was going to say. That's why I was saying with the unisex bathrooms where it's more open plan in a nightclub where they want to put these things in, I don't think it's a good idea either. Reason being is sometimes women use the toilet as a way to escape someone who may be giving them unwanted attention. And if a man can follow you in or whatever can follow you in, and you can't have that opportunity to be away from them as well, you could also have problems that way. So
Lisa,
I think that...
Thank you so much for your call. I just wanted to come back to you, Joanne, and say that that's genuine fear. That's genuine, whatever you want to say, the peril that she feels in there, Lisa, is real. Are you going to turn around and say you don't care about that? Or how would you respond to it?
I completely respect that. And it highlights the issue that society has a problem with predatory men. And I completely endorse the fact. I am worried about predatory men as well. The rise of the incel movement, the Andrew Tates of this world, that's where society has a problem. All of these strong, passionate discussions around toilets is not fixing the fundamental problem. Most pubs I go to that have a disabled toilet, they're locked, properly locked, and secured by a radar key. I would have to go to the bar to ask permission to use that toilet, and I might get asked, why do you want the key? Or carry my own. Again, it's inappropriate. The best facilities I've used are my local gym, sports club. They have a changing village. Cubicles where families can get changed, individuals can get changed, open plan showers with curtains so people can shower, and single cubicle toilets for everybody can use whenever they want. That's what we need to be doing. But right now, what we're doing is we're pushing the problem onto service providers, cinemas, clubs, bars, and saying you now need to retrofit all of your premises to make them fully inclusive for everybody so that nobody feels segregated or othered. Like your first caller talked about him being a disabled man, the spaces he values most are when he can use the gents, and there's disabled facilities within those gents. So again, he's not excluded or segregated in his right or othered. That's all we want. One space that everyone can use safely, and the government and everybody focuses on the issue in society around predatory men, not around demonising trans people.
It seems like the structures we have at the moment aren't pleasing anybody, really. They're not providing an answer for any of those. We're very much in a state of change and flux, aren't we, with this argument? And it seems like toilets, bizarrely, are the battlefield.
Well, they never
That's
used
what we end
to
up
be.
talking
Trans
about.
women have been sharing spaces with female toilets.
We have to move on. I'm so sorry. We've had to cut some of those calls short. Thank you so much, Joanne, for joining us there and putting us in the picture. We're going to move on.